The average American tries to change their life 11 times before giving up completely, and each attempt starts the same way. A burst of motivation, a radical new plan, a complete overhaul of everything, and then within 3 weeks, back to square one, feeling more defeated than before. Now look at Japan, a country where workers maintain laser focus for decades, where craftsmen spend 70 years perfecting a single skill, where the national train system operates with an average delay of under 1 minute, and where the concept of burnout feels almost foreign. The secret is not some genetic gift. It is a single word that rewired my brain in 21 days. Kaizen. This is the true story of what happened when I stopped trying to change everything at once and started changing almost nothing. I am about to walk you through the 21-day experiment that transformed how I work, eat, move, and think, using the Japanese philosophy of continuous microscopic improvement. Some of these shifts were so small they felt ridiculous at first. Others were so powerful, I could feel my discipline strengthening by the hour. By the end, I had built more genuine momentum than in the last 5 years of failed New Year resolutions combined. And the most shocking part, the habit that changed everything took less than 60 seconds a day. Day 1 started with a confession. I was staring at my reflection at 6 in the morning. Holding a gym membership I had used exactly 4 times in 8 months. A journal with 3 entries. And a meditation app that had sent me 247 ignored notifications. The bathroom light was that harsh fluorescent blue that makes everything look worse than it is, and I could see every tired line around my eyes. I remember setting the phone down on the cold tile counter and just standing there, bare feet on the bath mat, feeling the weight of all those abandoned intentions pressing on my chest. This is the Western approach to self-improvement. Identify everything wrong, declare war on your entire identity, and attempt to become a different person by Tuesday. We set goals so massive they require superhuman willpower, then we blame ourselves when we collapse. The gym membership becomes a monthly reminder of failure. The empty journal becomes evidence that we lack depth. The meditation app notifications become little digital accusations, each one whispering that we cannot even sit still for 10 minutes. In Japan, they have a word for a completely different path, a slow, quiet, continuous improvement that feels almost invisible while it is happening, but transforms everything over time. Kaizen. It literally translates to change for better, but the cultural meaning runs much deeper. It is the engine behind Toyota's rise from a small loom factory to the world's largest automaker. It is why Japanese schoolchildren improve incrementally every single day, rather than cramming for exams. It is how a sushi apprentice might spend 3 years just learning to wash rice before ever touching a knife. And I was about to apply it to the most undisciplined areas of my life. The first principle of Kaizen is deceptively simple. You ask one question. What is the smallest possible step I can take today that moves me toward my goal? Not the optimal step, not the impressive step. The smallest. If you want to become a runner, you do not buy expensive shoes and map out a 5K route. You put on your regular shoes and walk to the end of your driveway. If you want to meditate daily, you do not download an app and commit to 20 minutes. You sit in silence for one single breath. This sounds absurd. It sounds like it could not possibly work. And that is exactly what I thought on day 1, when I committed to my first Kaizen experiment. I remember actually laughing out loud in my kitchen, standing there in my old college sweatshirt with the frayed cuffs, thinking that one push-up was not going to change anything. But I had tried everything else, and everything else had failed, so absurdity felt like the only option left. I chose 3 areas where my discipline had completely collapsed. Physical movement, focused work, and nutrition. 3 pillars of daily life that I had been battling for years, always losing, always restarting, always feeling like I was trapped in a cycle I could not break. For movement, my Kaizen step was so small, I was almost embarrassed to tell anyone. I committed to doing one single push-up every morning, not a set, not a workout. One push-up. The rule was simple. I had to drop to the floor and do one push-up before I was allowed to make coffee. And I mean literally before the coffee. The coffee maker sat there on the counter, the bag of grounds next to it, the mug waiting in its spot by the sink, and I was not allowed to touch any of it until my chest touched the kitchen floor and pushed back up one time. For focused work, my Kaizen step was to open my laptop and write one sentence. Just one. I did not have to continue. I did not have to produce anything meaningful. One sentence, and I was free to close the laptop and walk away. The sentence could be terrible. It could be I have no idea what to write. It could be a description of the weather. It did not matter. The only requirement was that my fingers moved across the keys and produced a complete sentence, period at the end. For nutrition, my Kaizen step was to drink 1 glass of water before my first cup of coffee. That was it. I filled a clear glass, drank it standing at the kitchen window while the coffee brewed, and then I could have my coffee exactly as I always did. 3 microscopic habits that required almost zero willpower to complete. The total time commitment across all 3 was maybe 90 seconds. The first 3 days were strange. I felt like I was cheating. One push-up took approximately 3 seconds. I would drop down onto the cold kitchen floor, the linoleum pressing against my palms, do one single push-up with probably terrible form, and then stand up feeling vaguely ridiculous. One sentence took maybe 15 seconds. I would open the laptop, the screen glowing to life. Type something utterly forgettable like "the morning light is coming through the window." Close the laptop and walk away. The glass of water was something I already did sometimes, so it barely registered as a new habit at all. I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, for the moment when my brain would realize it was being tricked and rebel. But that moment never came. Instead, something unexpected started happening around day 4. After finishing my one push-up, I found myself thinking, well, I am already down here, I might as well do 5. The floor was already cold. My hands were already planted. My muscles were already engaged. Doing 4 more push-ups required almost no additional activation energy. After writing one sentence, I often wrote a paragraph without even noticing. The laptop was already open. My fingers were already on the keys. The blank page was already in front of me. One more sentence just sort of happened, and then another, and then suddenly I had written 200 words without any internal negotiation. The glass of water led to me feeling slightly less ravenous for my morning pastry. I would walk past the bakery on my way to work, the one with the almond croissants in the window, and the usual magnetic pull was just a little bit weaker. This is the first hidden mechanism of Kaizen. The hardest part of any task is the start, the friction of beginning. By lowering the barrier to almost nothing, you bypass the resistance entirely. Once you are in motion, momentum takes over. A 2023 study from the University of Tokyo examined habit formation in over 2,000 participants and found that those who began with what researchers called minimum viable actions were 340% more likely to maintain the habit after 60 days compared to those who started with ambitious targets. The brain does not rebel against one push-up. It rebels against the idea of an hour at the gym. When you tell your brain you have to drive to the gym, change clothes, work out for an hour, shower, and drive back, it calculates the total energy cost and slams the brakes. When you tell your brain you have to lower yourself to the floor and push back up one time, there is nothing to rebel against. The threat level is 0. By day 7, I was doing 30 push-ups every morning without forcing it. I remember the exact morning it hit me. I was on the kitchen floor, the the sun just starting to come through the window, and I realized I had done 25 push-ups without once thinking about stopping. My body just kept going, like it had found a rhythm it did not want to break. I was writing 300 to 500 words before breakfast. The sentences had stopped being terrible somewhere around day 5. They were not brilliant, but they were coherent, and some of them were even good. I was drinking 3 glasses of water before noon. The clear glass on the counter had become a fixture, something my hand reached for automatically. But this was not willpower. This was the natural expansion of a habit that had already taken root. And here is where the second principle of Kaizen entered the experiment. In Japan, Kaizen is not just about starting small. It is about never stopping the improvement. Once one push-up becomes easy, you do not jump to 100. You add one more, then one more. The increments remain microscopic, but they compound with terrifying speed. This is the exact opposite of the Western approach, where we attempt to grow by 500% overnight, fail, and then quit entirely. We are a culture of extremes. We go from couch to marathon training in a single week. We go from eating fast food every meal to a juice cleanse that leaves us shaking and miserable. We swing wildly between overindulgence and deprivation, and we wonder why we cannot sustain anything. The Japanese approach grows by 1%, then another 1%, then another. And after a year, you are 37 times better than when you started. Not through heroic effort, through the mathematics of compounding. If you improve by just 1% each day, you do not end up 365% better after a year. You end up 3,700% better, because each day's improvement builds on the previous day's gains. This is the power of compound growth, the same force that turns small investments into fortunes over decades. Applied to your daily habits. I decided to test this on my work habits, which had been the biggest source of shame in my life. For years, I had struggled with deep focus. I would sit down to write, check my phone, open a tab, wander to the kitchen, and suddenly 3 hours had vanished with nothing to show for it. The shame of this was cumulative. Every wasted morning added another layer of self-doubt. Every unproductive afternoon made me wonder if I was fundamentally broken. If I simply lacked whatever gene allowed other people to sit still and produce work. I had read every productivity book. I had tried every app. I had bought a standing desk, a fancy chair, noise-canceling headphones, a mechanical keyboard that made satisfying clicking sounds. None of it worked because the problem was not my tools. The problem was the wall of resistance I had built up around the act of writing itself. My Kaizen solution was almost laughable. I set a timer for 5 minutes. Not 25 minutes like the famous Pomodoro technique. Not 90 minutes like the supposed ultradian rhythm, 5 minutes. The rule was that during those 5 minutes, I could do anything except leave my chair or touch my phone. I could stare at the wall, I could type gibberish, I could daydream. But I could not escape. I could not give myself the relief of checking a notification, or standing up to refill my water, or suddenly remembering that I needed to reorganize my bookshelf. 5 minutes of sitting, with the discomfort of being in front of my work. On day 1, 5 minutes felt like an eternity. I watched the timer like a prisoner watching a clock. My leg bounced. My fingers drummed on the desk. Every neuron in my brain was screaming at me to get up, to check something, to do literally anything other than sit there. But I made it through 5 minutes, and when the timer beeped, I felt a surge of relief so intense it was almost euphoric. I had done it. I had sat still for 5 minutes. It was not productive, but it was a win. On day 2, the 5 minutes felt slightly less agonizing. I actually typed a few words. On day 3, I wrote 2 sentences that were not complete nonsense. By day 10, something had shifted. 5 minutes had become 15, then 25, then 45, without me consciously deciding to extend it. My brain had learned that the chair was not a torture device. It was just a chair. The fear had dissolved. The resistance that had built up over years of failure was being dismantled, one tiny session at a time. This is the second hidden mechanism of Kaizen. It rewires your identity through accumulated evidence. Every time you complete your tiny commitment, your brain logs a win. You are a person who does push-ups. You are a person who writes. You are a person who focuses. After hundreds of these micro wins, your self-concept shifts permanently. You are no longer trying to become disciplined. You are disciplined, and the actions simply flow from that identity. This is the opposite of how most of us approach change. We try to use motivation to force actions, hoping that enough actions will eventually create an identity. But motivation is a finite resource. It burns hot and fast, and then it is gone. Kaizen bypasses motivation entirely. It starts with actions so small that motivation is irrelevant. And it uses those actions to build an identity that then generates more actions automatically. A 2024 study from Kyoto University's Department of Behavioral Psychology demonstrated that identity-based habit formation, where subjects accumulated small daily successes, produced lasting behavioral change that persisted even after external rewards were removed. The control group, which relied on motivation and ambitious goal setting, reverted to baseline within 3 weeks. The Kaizen group did not revert at all. Their brains had rewritten the story they told about themselves. They were no longer people trying to exercise. They were people who exercised. The difference is subtle in words but seismic in practice. By day 14, I was ready to apply Kaizen to the most intimidating area of my life: my relationship with food. For decades, I had been locked in a cycle of restrictive dieting followed by inevitable collapse. I would eliminate sugar, count every calorie, meal prep for hours on Sunday, and by Wednesday evening I was eating ice cream straight from the container, convinced I had no discipline whatsoever. The cycle was so predictable that I could set my watch to it. Sunday afternoon, I would fill the refrigerator with containers of grilled chicken and steamed broccoli, feeling virtuous and in control. Monday would go perfectly. Tuesday would go well, with maybe a few extra almonds that I did not log. Wednesday afternoon, the cravings would start, a low hum of deprivation that grew louder by the hour. By Wednesday night, I would be standing in front of the open freezer, spoon in hand, eating ice cream directly from the carton, while a voice in my head told me I was a failure. Thursday morning, I would wake up feeling bloated and defeated, and the diet would be officially over. I would tell myself I would start again on Monday, and the cycle would repeat. The Kaizen approach was radically different. Instead of removing everything bad, I added one good thing. Specifically, I committed to eating one piece of fruit before any meal that contained processed food. That was it. I did not ban pizza. I did not measure portions. I simply ate an apple or a handful of grapes before I was allowed to touch anything from a package. I bought a big bag of apples and kept them in a bowl on the counter where I could see them. I bought grapes and washed them all at once so they were ready to grab. The rule was simple. If I wanted a frozen pizza for dinner, I had to eat an apple first. If I wanted a bag of chips, I had to eat a handful of grapes first. I could still have the pizza and the chips. I just had to eat the fruit first. The effect was subtle at first. I would eat the apple, still craving the pizza, and then eat the pizza. But within a week, I noticed I was eating less pizza because I was already partially full. The apple was taking up space in my stomach, space that the pizza would have filled. And my body was registering satisfaction sooner. By the second week, I was actually craving the fruit, something that had never happened in my entire adult life. I would walk into the kitchen and my eyes would go to the bowl of apples, and I would feel a genuine desire for one. This was astonishing to me. I had spent decades thinking of fruit as a chore, something I should eat but never actually wanted. Now my body was asking for it. By the third week, I had naturally reduced my processed food intake by what I estimated was 40% without a single moment of deprivation. I had not banned anything. I had not counted a single calorie. I had simply added one good thing, and that good thing had quietly pushed out some of the bad things without a fight. This is the third hidden mechanism of Kaizen. Addition beats subtraction every time. The Western brain is built on restriction. No carbs, no sugar, no screens, no fun. We draw lines in the sand, and then we feel like failures when we cross them, which we always do, because restriction triggers a psychological backlash that is hardwired into the human brain. Tell yourself you cannot have something, and that thing becomes the only thing you can think about. The Japanese Kaizen brain is built on accumulation. Add a vegetable, add a walk, add a minute of deep breathing. As the good habits expand, they naturally crowd out the bad ones without triggering the psychological rebellion that sabotage makes inevitable. You are not depriving yourself. You are adding abundance. Your brain does not rebel against abundance. A fascinating 2022 study from Osaka University tracked 500 participants attempting dietary changes. The group instructed to add healthy foods without restricting anything lost an average of 11 pounds over 6 months and maintained the loss. The group instructed to eliminate unhealthy foods lost 14 pounds initially, but regained 18 within a year. The restriction group ended up heavier than when they started. The addition group simply kept improving. The restriction group spent 6 months fighting their own psychology and lost the war. The addition group spent 6 months gently nudging their habits in a better direction, and won without ever feeling like they were in a battle. Day 17 brought the most unexpected twist of the entire experiment. I had been applying Kaizen to my body, my work, and my food, but I had completely neglected my environment. Then I remembered something I had seen in a friend's apartment in Tokyo years ago. I was visiting him during a trip, staying on his fold-out couch in a small but immaculate apartment in the Shimokitazawa neighborhood. Every night before bed, he spent exactly 3 minutes tidying his living space. Not cleaning, not deep organizing, simply returning items to their designated homes. The remote control went back in its tray. The coffee cup went into the dishwasher. The mail went into a small basket by the door. 3 minutes and then he stopped. I remember watching him do this, the quiet efficiency of it. The way his hands moved without hurry, placing each object exactly where it belonged. He did not look like someone doing a chore. He looked like someone performing a small ritual, a gentle closing of the day. I had always dismissed this as a quirky personality trait, something unique to my fastidious friend, but suddenly I recognized it as pure Kaizen. So I tried it. I set a timer for 3 minutes every evening at 9 p.m. The rule was simple. I could tidy anything I wanted during those 3 minutes, but I had to stop the moment the timer went off. No marathons. No deep cleaning spirals that lasted until midnight. 3 minutes and then I was free. The first night, I cleared my coffee table and felt a tiny flicker of satisfaction. The table had been covered in magazines, empty mugs, a pair of scissors I had used 3 weeks ago, and a random collection of receipts. I put the magazines in a neat stack, carried the mugs to the kitchen, returned the scissors to the drawer, and threw away the receipts. The timer beeped and I stopped. The coffee table was not perfectly clean, but it was better than it had been in weeks. The second night, I organized my desk. I straightened the monitor, corralled the pens into their holder, stacked the notebooks, and wiped the surface with a damp cloth. 3 minutes and I stopped. The third night, I tackled the pile of clothes that had been living on my bedroom chair since the previous administration. I did not fold everything perfectly. I just moved the clothes to their proper places, hanging up the ones that needed hanging, putting the others in the hamper. 3 minutes and I stopped. By day 20, my apartment looked different. Not because I had spent hours cleaning, but because 180 seconds of daily effort compounded over nearly 3 weeks had eliminated the chaos. The coffee table stayed clear. The desk remained organized. The chair was just a chair again, not a clothing storage unit. But the real change was mental. Walking into a tidy space in the morning lowered my baseline stress level in a way I could physically feel. There was no visual noise competing for my attention. My eyes could rest. My mind felt clearer. My focus came faster. I had not realized how much mental bandwidth my cluttered environment had been consuming until it was gone. It was like a low hum I had been hearing for years had suddenly been switched off, and the silence was beautiful. This is the fourth hidden mechanism of Kaizen. Small environmental improvements create exponential psychological returns. A 2023 study from the University of Tokyo's Environmental Psychology Lab found that participants who maintained tidy workspaces through daily micro-habits reported 28% lower cortisol levels and 19% higher cognitive performance than those who let clutter accumulate and then cleaned in long sessions. The brain processes visual chaos as unfinished tasks, draining cognitive resources even when you are not consciously thinking about the mess. Every item out of place is a tiny open loop in your mind, a small demand for attention that never gets resolved. When you have dozens or hundreds of these open loops scattered across your living space, your brain is constantly, quietly, exhaustingly trying to track them all. 3 minutes of Kaizen tidying eliminates that drain without ever feeling like a burden. You are not cleaning your entire apartment. You are closing 3 minutes worth of open loops, and each closed loop frees up a little more mental energy for the things that actually matter. Now, I want to pause here and offer a small, honest caution, because I learned this the hard way around day 19. The Kaizen method is powerful, but it has a subtle trap that I fell into and that you should watch for. Once you start seeing results, the temptation to accelerate becomes almost overwhelming. You are doing 30 push-ups and feeling strong, and a voice in your head says, "Why not 50?" You are writing 500 words and feeling productive, and the voice says, "Why not 1,000?" You are tidying for 3 minutes and seeing your apartment transform, and the voice says, "Why not clean the whole place tonight?" This voice sounds reasonable. It sounds ambitious. It sounds like the person you want to become, but it is the same old Western brain trying to hijack the process. I gave in to this voice on day 19. I decided that since 3 minutes of tidying was working so well, I would do a full hour and really accelerate the transformation. I spent an hour cleaning my kitchen, scrubbing the counters, organizing the pantry, wiping down every surface. It felt productive in the moment, but the next night, when 9 p.m. arrived, I looked at my timer and felt a wave of resistance. My brain had reassociated tidying with an hour of work instead of 3 easy minutes. I skipped that night. Then I almost skipped the next night too. It took me 2 days to recover the momentum I had built over nearly 3 weeks. The lesson was clear. The minimum is sacred. You can always do more if you genuinely want to in the moment. But you can never raise the minimum before it feels almost laughably easy. If you are tempted to accelerate, add 1 more push-up, not 20. Add 1 more minute, not 30. Protect the smallness of the habit like it is the most precious thing you own, because it is. Day 21 arrived, and I sat down at my now clear desk with a cup of coffee and a sense of quiet astonishment to assess what had actually changed. The numbers were almost hard to believe. I had gone from 0 push-ups to 40 every morning, without a single missed day. 40 push-ups, every single morning for 21 straight days. Before this experiment, I had not done 40 push-ups in a single day in probably 5 years. I had written over 7,000 words across the 3 weeks, more than I had produced in the previous 3 months combined. The words were not all good, but they existed, which was more than I could say for the months of blank pages that had come before. I had eaten 63 pieces of fruit and naturally reduced my processed food intake without a single moment of willpower struggle. I had not banned a single food. I had not counted a single calorie. I had simply eaten an apple or some grapes before meals, and my diet had quietly, gently shifted toward something healthier. I had spent 63 minutes tidying and transformed my living environment. 63 minutes, barely more than an hour total across 3 weeks, and my apartment looked and felt completely different. But the most important change was invisible. For the first time in my adult life, I trusted myself. Every evening when I completed my 3-minute tidy, my brain logged another deposit in the bank of self-trust. Every morning when I dropped to the floor for my push-up, I proved to myself that I was a person who follows through. Not because I was motivated, not because I had found the perfect system, but because the actions were so small that failure was almost impossible. Self-trust is not built through grand achievements. It is built through keeping small promises to yourself over and over until your brain accepts as fact that when you say you will do something, you do it. I had spent years breaking big promises to myself and wondering why I did not trust my own intentions. The answer was obvious in retrospect. I had never given myself a promise I could actually keep. This is the ultimate gift of Kaizen. In the West, we have been taught that discipline requires suffering. That real change demands heroic effort. That if you are not exhausted and miserable, you are not trying hard enough. We wear burnout like a badge of honor. We brag about how little sleep we got, how many hours we worked, how much we sacrificed. We have turned struggle into a virtue and made ease into a sin. Japan whispers a different truth. Discipline is not built through grand gestures. It is built through tiny, consistent actions that are so easy you cannot talk yourself out of them. The samurai did not become masters by attempting to split arrows on their first day. They spent years learning to breathe, to stand, to hold the bow, before they ever released a single shot. The tea ceremony masters do not rush to perform elaborate rituals. They spend decades perfecting the way they wipe a single bowl. The motion of wiping a bowl, a motion that takes perhaps 3 seconds, is practiced thousands of times until it becomes not just perfect but unconscious, a part of the master's being rather than an action they perform. This is not patience. This is Kaizen, the understanding that greatness is not a destination you sprint toward. It is a direction you walk, one step at a time for the rest of your life. So here is what I want you to do right now. Not tomorrow, not when you feel ready. Not when you have bought the right equipment or read the right book or found the perfect moment. Right now, identify one area of your life where your discipline has collapsed. Maybe it is exercise, maybe it is reading, maybe it is calling your mother. Maybe it is something you have been avoiding for so long that just thinking about it makes you feel a little bit sick. Now ask yourself the Kaizen question. What is the smallest possible step I can take today? Not the impressive step, not the optimal step, the smallest. 1 push-up, 1 sentence, 1 page, 1 minute, 1 deep breath, 1 glass of water, 1 item put back in its place. Commit to that microscopic action every single day for the next week. Not 21 days, not a month, 7 days. If you miss a day, the step was too big. Make it smaller. If 1 push-up is too much, make it 1 knee push-up. If 1 sentence is too much, make it 1 word. There is always a smaller step. There is always a version of the habit that is so easy you cannot fail. If you do the action and want to do more, you are allowed, but you are never required. The only requirement is the minimum. Protect the minimum like it is sacred, because it is. This is how discipline skyrockets, not through force. Through the quiet, relentless accumulation of tiny wins that your brain cannot resist. The Japanese have known this for centuries. Now you know it too. Start so small it feels ridiculous. That is the entire secret.